Hello, and welcome to Deep In Pact, a proud member of the Duff Network, where we dive deep into Wildbow's most besieged work, 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And we are back to talk about Duress 12.5, or as it's alternatively known, the Bad Plan chapter. Or, no, not the Bad Plan chapter, yeah. A Bad Plan chapter, yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a big call to make. I'm not ready to make that call until the very end of the book, and even then, I think it will be like you could do like a 64 bracket, like on who deserves that title,
and maybe we will.
But before we dive into the chapter, I wanted to quickly touch on the fan art results because we were away when it ended, and we forgot to do it last time, which was silly. So obviously the winner was Your Kid by Aquila.
And
Aquila?
Yeah, I'm going to pull a bit of a Kanye West moment here and say, yes, Aquila, you did well. But actually, Helen C had the best fan art of the year with Right Hand.
Yes, so obviously we were thrilled to see not only like a couple of fantastic Pact fan art bits, but you know, one that made it all the way to second, and it was really I really liked it.
Yeah, it was really good.
It was a great example of how to throw a bunch of references in a very natural way. So yeah, congratulations, Helen C.
The references were in there in a way that Scott, who still hasn't read most of Pact, didn't get them, but everyone else did get them, and they weren't spoilers, which was top stuff, yeah. Helen C. So awesome work.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And obviously those of you who listen to We've Got Wood as well will know that the costume contest for Halloween has kicked off over there. Now, technically on paper, it's a Parahumans fan art contest.
Oh yeah, but it's Halloween. It's Halloween. Pact is so much more Halloween than Parahumans.
Well, Matt and Scott have a big weakness, which is that they're actually very nice people. So I don't think they're going to say no to people who submit Pact costumes.
Yeah.
So we haven't run this by them at all, but I say go ahead and submit Pact costumes if you wanna.
Is there a theme, or it's just Halloween?
There'll be a link in the show notes.
Sorry for throwing you under the bus like this, Elliot. Yeah, do your best. Insert theme here. Themed costume, and it'll be great. What are some good ideas for Pact costumes? You could do a Blake. That would be pretty cool. You could do a Barbatorum, get a pair of shears, or just like a person in a pair of shears and you're like in the reflection. That would be cool. Don't know how you're going to do it, but you'll figure it out. Walk around with a big mirror around yourself. That's a pretty good Blake, or even Rose for the female cosplayers there. Works for both.
You could reuse a Chicken Little costume and be Evan.
Yep.
Play both sides.
Do you remember, Elliot, when Rose was in the mirror? Feels like it was so long ago now.
It was almost 2 weeks in story time.
Not even that, like 1 week. So submit your entries to the costume contest, and I would love to see some Pact-themed costumes, especially of Green Eyes, which I know would be difficult to do, but I'd love to see it. Just get an Ariel costume and some green contact lenses, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that would actually be amazing. And I mean, Green Eyes is a fan favorite. I reckon that's a smart choice.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, should we
do the chapter? Should we even do the chapter? Let's skip the chapter this time and just talk about costume ideas. No. So, if you recall, at the end of last chapter, Duress 12.4, Blake suggested that they go to the Abyss, and everyone was like, that's obviously a terrible plan, and now it's 12.5, and they're just going to do it. No time to talk about it, just do it. Operation Drain Drop is a go, and Ty starts kind of half preparing, half improvising a way to get there.
Yeah, and I mean, doesn't this feel so, like, Pact or the world of Pact that they spent a bunch of time talking last chapter, didn't really get anywhere, and now they're just having their hands forced, and they're having to go ahead with a plan that they're not really happy with. We talked a lot about how people just sort of leave things until they're forced to do something about it, and like, I mean, they had a lot to get through, so maybe this is unfair, but it kind of feels like that's what's happening here a bit.
Yeah. They say that a good compromise leaves everyone unhappy, and this plan obviously leaves everyone unhappy, so therefore it's probably a good plan.
Yeah. I mean, sure. That's the only way
you're going
to get through in this world.
Yep.
I mean, also, I brought this up in my live read, and I'm just doing it again here because it very much upsets me that it looks like a lot of the books are going to get destroyed.
Mm.
And that probably says something about me, that like I'm getting more upset at the books getting destroyed than like almost anything else that's happened in this story so far. But I hate it. I hope the books are going to be okay.
I bet some of these books have demons in them as well, which means if they get destroyed, those demons are coming out, which is kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, well, hopefully the thought of that is reason enough for everyone to just leave the books alone.
Yeah.
Because it's just the thought, they spent generations building this library up, and all that information will be lost. It's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all shit information, but still.
Yeah, it's all about demons, so maybe it's fine that it gets lost. So we get a quote here by Blake saying, "You've basically summed up the last few weeks of my life." And of course, this is our every arc reminder that this whole story has taken place over the course of a few weeks. This story is basically a month of hell for Blake.
Yeah, and especially because he was kind of out of it for most of that, right? Like an inordinate amount of our time, of the time that's passed in this story, was in that one chapter. Was it 9.4, 9.3? Where he found out that his past was a crock of shit, sort of. And so it's kind of like, the whole rest of the story has been over 2-3 weeks.
2 weeks, 2.5, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was like, maybe a month or so he lost to just that vision. So it's not been a great month for Blake.
Yeah, since he got out of the drains, it's been like 3 days, maybe.
Maybe. It depends how long he was in that mirror. He kind of lost track of
true.
time.
That's true.
But yeah, and so I think the other thing I wanted to touch on from this segment was, so as you said, Ty is jerry-rigging a portal to the Abyss, and he draws an Ouroboros, which, as one of the 3 people in the history of the world that has watched the show Millennium, is a symbol that stands out to me. So I just wanted to talk about that, because for people who don't know, like the Ouroboros, it's that like snake eating its own tail. Mm-hmm. It's like, it symbolizes a bunch of stuff. Like, it's often to do with infinity and stuff. But one of the big ones is like the whole, cycle of life and death. Like, it's a snake eating its own tail. It sort of talks about how, new life springs up from consuming the old. Chewing up the old and spitting out the new.
What does that
like? It's
mean?
Just such a perfect.
Yeah,
it's such a perfect image for the Abyss. Like, we don't know enough about general portals or anything, like portal rituals or like the Abyss summoning stuff to know for sure. But the Ouroboros as a symbol for the Abyss is just sort of so perfect that I have to believe that this was maybe part of Ty's just really clever improving. Like, maybe he was just like, based on what he said about the Abyss, he knows enough about it to be like, yeah, this is a pretty good symbol for that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wonder how much of Ty's ritually thing here is improved. It seems very improved, which, if true, Ty, you're doing bang on work, man. Like, this works very well considering.
Actually, I think Blake mentioned that the Ouroboros was facing in, not out. And so maybe that distinction, like the fact that he's making that distinction, implies that when they've done portals in the past, it was an Ouroboros going, facing out, not in. So maybe it is sort of a general portal or abyss image, but it's so great for where they're about to go, especially considering Blake's relationship with the Abyss.
Yeah, definitely. So as Ty is kind of setting this up, they're chit-chatting, and Tiffany and Ellie have this interesting little spat where Tiffany's kind of trying to promote having an optimistic view, even in the face of all the kind of death and horror that they're facing, while Ellie is obviously a lot more negative, a lot more of a pessimist.
Yeah, I mean, basically, us and Ellie just get a little reminder that the Thorbones don't have a monopoly on shit families.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's interesting. I don't feel like this bit has resolved
No,
yet. Like,
yeah, it definitely feels like Ellie has more to say, and Tiffany she kind of hints at things that you feel like are going to get more developed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I feel like more this is just reminding us that Tiff has this kind of terrible backstory, and so, like, it's maybe laying the seeds. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this shows up in the next few chapters again, like something to do with Tiffany's backstory, especially considering, I mean, it looks like they're about to get right out of the Abyss, but like, who knows if other people had visions when Blake had his.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, like the obvious thing that sort of starts to come up is that basically a lot of the Thorburns always like to say, "Oh, I'm a bit shit, but it's because my family's shit."
Yeah.
And Tiffany's sort of standing here as this example of, well, just because the people who you grew up with shit, it doesn't mean you have to be shit.
Yeah, she's a great counterexample to that narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And well, we've mentioned how Pact has talked about this a fair bit throughout the story, so it'll be interesting to see how that develops if she's standing as a bit of a counterexample to that.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of think back to the Tiffany that we knew back in the Toronto arc, who was someone who was quite meek and seemed a bit weak-willed, and she does really well here. Like she really confidently and competently holds her own and defends her point eloquently against Ellie. And I kind of like the direction that she's gone. She's still obviously someone who has a lot of baggage that she's kind of working through, but she's clearly kind of turned into someone who has taken on a lot of this responsibility that's been lumped on her and really run with it. I'm really a Tiffany stan here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're right. Back in Toronto, she was sort of the one they were having to, like, sort of contrive scenarios where she could be out the back or whatever and avoiding conflict because she was the one dealing with it the worst. And now she's just kind of strong as fuck, and like she's the one laying down defensive barriers. She is one of the ones who copes better when they end up in the abyss.
Yeah.
As you said, she kind of just shuts Ellie down here.
But
she's really stepping up and just kind of owning it, and it's pretty great.
The thing I love about it as well is that it hasn't made her cold. Like, you could kind of see it as her. I think for a different character, you could see her becoming more badass in quotes, which is not really the right word, but whatever. As her losing that Tiffany kind of touch, but she was the one who gave Midge 2 coats, duct taped together or whatever. Like, she's still clearly someone who is very empathetic and caring, but also a lot better in a crisis than she used to be. Like, she's really blossomed, and I'm so here for it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and she was drawing much better boundaries and all this stuff with Ellie, like just kind of standing her ground and being like, no, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, totally. It was awesome. So, in order to get to the Abyss, they have to destroy something valuable. They try with a brooch that was stolen by Ellie, but it doesn't work. But luckily for them, the desk that they used to destroy the brooch ends up working. It breaks through the floor and opens a little portal down to the Abyss, then falls into the Abyss itself, gone forever.
So I'd like to say, I think I like this idea of having to sacrifice something valuable as being, again, maybe specific to the Abyss rather than portals in general. Because it's like the idea of the fact, like, really, what you have to sacrifice is something with meaning. And presumably in the world of Pact, that means something with lots of important and strong connections.
Yes.
And that's just so perfect. The idea of the Abyss basically saying, you got to give me meaning that I can chew up, and I'll let you in. I really like it. And apparently this desk meets that criteria.
I absolutely love that they try with the brooch and it fails, and then the desk accidentally works. It's like, it's classic Wild Boar world building where, like, in a lesser story, you can imagine that they try with the brooch and it works and it's got sentimental value. And it's not really a thing. The kind of meat of this chapter is them in the tenements, right? So why would you even need to have a little bit of a, oh no, it's not going to work, but it does kind of thing? But it's so classic, like having this little extra beat that says, okay, you thought it was this brooch, but actually this writing desk has a lot of sentimental value to Granny Rose, presumably, and now it's lost. And it kind of adds this, like, it just adds so much flair and flavor to how everything goes down. It's so typical for Wabo, and I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, it's one of those little extra details we've talked about a fair bit. Like, it's sort of that extra step in the world building and stuff that just makes it feel so much more alive. And I think in general, this whole segment with opening this portal, it handles the tension so well. Like, just as they're getting ready to start trying to open the portal, everything suddenly goes silent outside, and that makes things even more ominous because you're like, okay, they're trying something.
Yeah.
And then as they're sort of moving the table over, something's banging down the door, and it just keeps getting more and more tense, and then it doesn't work, and you're panicking. It's and then it sort of accidentally just kind of works. It's like really tense to read. It's really well managed.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? You can kind of imagine them jumping quickly down into the portal as a djinn or whatever. I mean, not the djinn vanished, but as some malicious thing lunges at them and misses them by a hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they all jump down into the abyss, and they find themselves basically holding onto the side of a huge apartment complex with tens, if not hundreds, of windows, and it's a new drain. It's awesome. We find a new area. It's called the Tenements, and it's one of my favorite Abyss locations. I'm really hyped for it. It gives me that Stargate vibe, where the thing about Stargate was literally anything could be on the other side of the gate. And it's the same thing here, where there are a bunch of windows and anything could come out of any window at any time. So it's literally just free reign for any wild shit to happen, and I love it.
Yeah, there's a great sort of potluck feeling to as they go past each apartment. I mean, I'm just kind of impressed in the whole group that nobody fell all the way down.
Oh yeah,
like the fact that everyone managed to grab onto something and then they all managed to kind of keep climbing. Like good on everyone.
Yeah, they really nailed it.
I probably would have just fallen and died. This would have been the ending of my story.
Let's be real. I wouldn't have made it this far.
I wouldn't have made it this far. But yeah, if I'd made it this far, this would have been yet another point where it probably would have ended. But yeah, I want to quickly talk about the tenements as being the area under Jacob's Bell, because the way they move around here does seem to imply that the Abyss kind of maps 1-to-1 with normal reality,
with physical
to
space.
Some degree.
Yeah, that's what Alexis says. They need to go 200 meters northwest so that they're out of the house.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, that seems to imply to me that there's at least some kind of mapping. And you know, we talked a bit in, I think it was our 11.x episode, about how, you know, the Abyss might have been like concepts that sort of slipped through the cracks in an area, or symbolic of the area somehow, but we weren't super sure. And obviously nothing we talked about makes sense for having giant apartments under Jacob's Bell.
Yes.
So like I was just trying to think on this more, like see if there, because I'm assuming there's some sort of general rule. It could just be random, I suppose, but I'm trying to piece together a rule. And what I've sort of gone was like one of the things we know about Jacob's Bell is it's been sort of waiting to grow, but it's been stalled by Hillsglade House, and so I wonder if like maybe the forms of the Abyss represent unused ideas or ideas that have been big but aren't manifesting in the area.
I actually suspect the different Abyss areas can have kind of different rules just based on the strong kind of vibes of that place. But I do really like the idea that this Tenements is what Jacob's Bell, specifically Jacob's Bell at Hillsglade House, could be, if not for Hillsglade House. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, you know, say the mall that Green Eyes ran into, which Walbo pointed out to us was actually like just sort of the back end of like a big like department store or something. So it wasn't like a mall. It was like, you know, the back of a department store, but as you went around it, it was just always the back of a department store. So I wonder if there was like some big department store that was meant to get built somewhere that didn't or something. You know, or you're right, maybe it's like different areas have sort of different effects, but it relates to the area in some way, but it doesn't always have to be the same way.
Yeah, because that one I don't think would make sense with the forest that we saw for Midge. Wait, was it Midge who was in the forest or the faceless woman? I can't remember. There was a forest at some point.
I was actually just looking that up. No, Walbo actually pointed that out to us as well. I don't think there was a forest.
Wasn't there?
It was the Revenant asked Blake if he was from the forest, and I took that to be an implication that the faceless woman was from a forest.
Right.
But Walbo actually just pointed out that Blake is like a walking tree, so the Revenant might have been assuming he came from a forest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So there may not have been a forest area. I'm actually just skimming through 11.x now, trying to remember what Midge's version looked like.
On the Pact wiki, I don't think it mentioned a forest as one of the Abyss locations that we see. There's the drains, the mall, the tenements, but no forest. Anyway. Yeah, I do like the idea of lost potential, though. I think it fits in really well thematically with what the Abyss could be.
especially for Jacob's spell, because there is seemingly a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of unused potential for
yeah,
now.
yes.
I actually did I did some quick Googling to see if there was like anything notable about Toronto's sewer system, like when I was trying to build this pattern. And you can do tours of it.
Don't take the
Apparently it
tour.
is yeah, apparently it is somewhat notable, but I would not recommend that because you may not make it back out as a human.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't come up with anything concrete, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll see. I do have to say, I think the Abyss is one of my favorite like things in a Wild Boar story ever. Like conceptually, it's just so incredible. I really love it, and I love the way that it strips away all the artifice for all of our characters, and we get to see what the person is actually like underneath. We kind of see that with Roxanne and Katherine in this chapter, I would say. But regardless, like every time we're in the Abyss, it wows me how great of an idea for a place in this world it is.
I mean, yeah, like I get that it's terrible and everything, but every time we come down here, we see so many cool things. We get so many great reveals. It's a cool place to come as a reader.
Yes, I don't want to go there in real life.
Yeah. I'm almost bummed that it looks like they're about to get out so quickly because, I mean, obviously Blake saw something that's enough to justify this whole trip narratively, but I'd be super interested to learn more about what maybe happened to the rest of them while they were in here. Like, did the others see something, or not all of them have been pushed that much, aside from the general like rock climbing that they needed to do.
Yeah, it's true. Roxanne is the first one to face a bit of a trial, I would say. She is basically infested by bugs that do some really gross things. So, bug warning for those of you who are bug phobic. They just kind of crawl in her and under her skin, and it's really gross.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
You're a monster, Wild Boar. That's all we need to say. Yeah.
I mean, I choose to view this as an homage to the greatest movie ever, The Mummy Returns.
Ah, yes. That was a gross scene, that scarab scene. Ugh.
Well, the grossest scarab scene is in The Mummy. I'm talking about The Mummy Returns, the even better one. But that's not an argument we need to have right now. Okay. I could talk about these movies for a long time. Let's just move on.
I don't want to talk too much about gross bug infestations, I'll be honest. If I wanted that, we'd do a podcast about Worm. So, yeah, this is horrible. It's really horrifying, and it makes me feel really bad for Roxanne, which is a sentence I didn't think I would ever say.
Yeah. Obviously, she cops it pretty bad. And I mean, because, she sort of gives up here for a little bit, which is sort of interesting. Like as you sort of said, we're seeing a bit more of all our people, how they deal with adversity
or don't deal.
Well, yeah, and Roxanne seems to really struggle here. But there's a few other interesting character interactions we should touch on from this section. Like Green Eyes seems really pissed at Blake that they're back here, which is fair. But I also found that very upsetting because she's been such a positive. She's been giving off such positive vibes till now that it's like I don't know. It's just sad to see her angry.
I agree with that statement. It's just funny to me that everyone has so easily latched onto Green Eyes giving out such positive vibes because she is like on her surface a really creepy, horrifying mermaid monster. But like everyone just kind of immediately jumps on board with like she is a wholesome force of good, which I really like. No, you're right. It's interesting. I kind of wonder. I mean, Green Eyes kind of has a point that it's like her worst nightmare being back here, right? Yeah, I can kind of understand why she's a little peeved that she has been summoned back up. She was freed, then she was summoned to help a friend, and then that friend was like, "Ooh, psych, let's go."
Yeah, exactly. There's also this bit where Blake like enters the place and saves Alexis, and then like makes a point of noting that he abandoned her.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, it seemed very un-Blake.
It's strong wording, isn't it? For like leaving her to go help someone else.
Yeah, it's its own paragraph too. It's just I abandoned her. And that seems not only kind of un-Blakeish to abandon someone, but particularly Alexis. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, especially considering how this chapter ends. I'm not sure exactly what to read into that because obviously where their relationship was, like at this point in the story is irrelevant by the end of the chapter. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
I like the idea that he could be reading that from her, from the spirits, which you wrote down in these notes. I really like that. Like, maybe he's just like, yeah, I'm going to leave her and go do something else to help someone else. But Alexis sees it as, oh, he's just come over and then he's abandoned me. And so that's how Blake's internal narrative worded it. I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, it sort of made sense to me a bit. I mean, I think the other thing that sort of stood out to me, and this is more, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but Blake thinks a number of times in this sort of section where he's chatting to everyone, he's like, oh, you know, I have to properly prepare them for how the Abyss will try to hit them with visions and stuff, which is just great because he's the one who's kind of caught completely off guard by an Abyss vision for the second half of this chapter.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny that he spends so much time worrying about everyone else. He forgot to take care of himself. Like,
yeah,
classic Blake.
I mean, they all might have had a vision. We haven't really had enough time to know that they haven't.
No, but even if they had, you know, he was too busy trying to tell them to be careful to kind of steal himself at all.
Yes, which is bad. I mean, we know that the visions really rocked his world, let's say, last time he was here. So, you know, it makes sense that he should have expected this to happen again.
Yeah, pretty much. Although I don't know what you can really do about it.
Yeah, I mean, last time his strategy was just kind of like trust that Rose is there to help his friends, and that was enough to kind of keep him on side and on Team Rose. But that doesn't seem to be the vibe that he gets from this one because he's not prepared and he knows he can help his own friends now, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I just want to pull out my favourite line of this chapter, which was Blake saying, "Ask if you need help or you can't find a way, okay?" I heard one okay from elsewhere. I really hoped it was someone I knew and not a stranger's voice, which is awesome. It's just like, it's such a perfect encapsulation of what the horror of the Abyss is, that it's like this weird place where there's literally monsters everywhere. It's great.
I mean, I love this beat is equal parts comedy and horror, and I think there's actually a few times in this chapter while we're in the Abyss where it's like things are simultaneously absolutely horrible and absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, like those clowns.
And yeah, so I know I just really like the way that those two, because I think that's really hard to do, is add the comedy but still make me feel the horror, and I think this chapter does it a number of times.
Yeah, I think it's good because we've been talking about kind of tension management in this story, and you know, one of the best ways to diffuse tension is with a little bit of comedy, right? And so I think the tone of this chapter is really well managed, where you're tense the whole time because a few characters get quite close to death throughout this chapter, but Warbo kind of keeps the tone a little bit light so that you don't get too bogged down in the high intensity-ness of it. So Roxanne is still getting bugged, and she starts to really freak out, and even some lies from Peter doesn't help. So she freaks out enough that she's just like, nope, can't do this, and she heads inside to, I don't know, freak out more, I guess. And
pretty much.
I think this is the first time that Roxanne really gets the message about how horrifying this world is. She's kind of been treating it a bit like a game, which is because she's a bit of a psycho, but she kind of groks the horrifying nature of the world now, which is good. She needs to know that.
Yeah, good, maybe a strong word, but yeah, I mean, as we sort of already touched on, it's interesting the way she sort of gives up. Yeah, I guess, you know, it'd be interesting to track her going forward. I could see a situation where it's like, she's kind of always been the most psychotic and horrible thing around.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, as the most fucked up thing, she's used to being a big fish in a little pond, and now she's kind of a little fish in a big fucked up pond. And, you know, she doesn't have the tools to cope with that because she's used to being
She's out of her fucked up depth.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's an interesting read. I like it. I kind of had this thought while I was rereading this chapter about. We did a discussion question a while ago about like how you would handle telling your friends about the practice or whether you'd tell them. And I remember landing pretty solidly on I mean, there's some spooky stuff, but on the whole, magic is pretty awesome. And this story has done so much to convince me that that is the wrong opinion to take. Like, being awakened is full on a curse. Like, having to deal with all this stuff is terrible. I think the only practitioners that we see able to lead a normal life while being practitioners is the Sisters of the Torch. I can't think of another example where their life isn't made shitty by this.
I guess when it's not wartime and stuff, things like the Bahams seem to have.
That's
really
true.
normal...
The extended Bahams that aren't the core group seem to be able to lead relatively normal lives. That's fair. Even so, it's a low success rate, I reckon.
Yeah, and I mean, people like Fell have talked about that, like how ignorance is bliss, basically.
Yeah.
In this world,
even being a Baham, like your family makes the wrong enemy once, Blake Thorburn, and he basically has free license in his mind to hunt you down and kill you, which is pretty fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, by having the knowledge, you lose the protections, and you open yourself up to all the danger of this world. And it's not just people who awaken. I mean, we talked about what we thought the term was here for people who like sort of lose the innocence, but don't actually become practitioners, like Mags's dads.
Yep. The Thorburns.
Yeah. One user on our Discord suggested the term or the verb initiate rather than awaken.
Yeah.
So like Blake has initiated.
I think we were calling it indoctrinated before that, weren't we?
Yeah, maybe. But yes, I've forgotten the name of the user. Everyone's got Halloween names in our Discord at the moment, so I don't know what their normal names are. It was something about hornets.
Yeah.
So shout out to that user for the idea. But yeah, I don't know. Like just giving people information of this world is just. I mean, it's a very high risk. You can see why nobody wants to take this risk normally.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So Blake heads in after Roxanne and basically gives her a Uncle Paul style pep talk, which does work. She agrees to come back outside, and not a moment too soon, because this really creepy boogeyman has snuck up on them and is about to do some horrifying thing. Before Blake basically says, "No, don't do it," and the guy's like, "Oh, okay,"
This guy's so terrifying. Like, just everything about how he's described is just so unnerving.
Yes.
And then it makes Blake actually feel kind of boss.
Yeah.
The way he's just like, nah. And this guy's like, okay.
So this boogeyman has been nicknamed the defenestration boogeyman by the fandom, which I love, with the assumption people assume that he wanted to throw them out the window, but it could have been anything, obviously. And after they climb away, he kind of like slides out the window in a really creepy way as well. It's classic.
Yeah, I mean, defenestration kind of seems odd for this guy because we saw so many other things. Like, there's a giant hand later that comes out and pushes people out windows. So I don't know if that was really his jam, or maybe that was his hand. I guess we don't know enough about his powers.
Yeah.
But like the bit where he just pops out like horizontally,
just watching them
from the window, and is watching them is it was. I love how unnerving everything about this guy was. He was pretty fun. I do really like the bit where Blake finds himself giving the Uncle Paul or his dad type talk. I mean, I feel like as adults we've all had moments like that, right? Like, sure, has everyone had that moment where you find yourself saying something and then you're like, oh my god,
I sound like my parents.
Yeah.
I never thought it would come to this.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I just really liked that moment. And it seems to work. So, keep doing it, Blake. I guess.
Thumbs up, Blake. So Roxanne and Blake keep climbing, and suddenly a hilarious group of clowns basically go fishing for Katherine and get her. They catch themselves a big old Auntie Kathy.
Yeah, I mean, this happens very quickly. Like, it's just Blake's just sort of talking about it, and then it's just suddenly, and there's clowns, and they've got a noose, and they've got Katherine, and you're just like, oh shit, like it all just kind of is over before you know what's happening.
Yeah, she is caught and is immediately in danger. And it's... Look, I don't know how to read this, but Katherine seems to just accept that she's going to die. Like, Blake starts to climb down to help her, and she says, no, go on without me, basically. My arm is broken, I'm fucked, just go on. And it's... I don't know how to read this. Like, it could be protectiveness of Roxanne that could be supported by the text, or it could just kind of also be, and this is where I'm leaning more to, I think, that she just seems to be so sick of being a part of this world that it's just, she's just done. She's willing to just give up.
Yeah, I agree. I also was sort of torn between those two reads, and, Pact, it's both, blah, blah, blah. I was more leaning towards the heroic side, just because of the focus on Roxanne and everything she says. Just the way she phrases most things led me to think that she was more thinking of them going away. Like, the giving up move really would be to just drop. I don't know.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel... It doesn't feel heroic, I guess, is the thing that makes me feel it's not that. Like, she doesn't feel like she's doing a heroic thing. She doesn't act like she's doing a heroic thing. And maybe that's just the drains, maybe that's just Katherine, but that's what kind of makes it feel not like that to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually did sort of get the feeling that what she was doing was quite heroic. So maybe we just sort of disagree on that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. Yeah, like, I think either way, it's not. It's better than some of the other shit she's done.
True.
She doesn't just fold like she has.
Yeah. Kind of thinking about it more, I kind of came to this interesting idea that maybe this whole practitioner thing about the house is hitting her harder than we thought. Like, Katherine, of all the Thorburns, seems to be the one most invested, beyond maybe Uncle Paul, who can't actually win the house for himself. She seems to be the one most invested on trying to get the inheritance. And so maybe the fact that she's kind of found out how shitty that inheritance actually is hitting her hard, like making her reevaluate how much she's done to try and get this house basically all for nothing.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that angle before, but that's actually really interesting. And because you're right, like, sort of applies to Katherine, but like, it would apply to most of the adult females. Like, Paige is the other one I immediately sort of jumped to as, as she's presumably learnt more and more from Isadora, you'd have to think that that's going to be affecting her on some level.
Yeah.
That this sort of thing that she's been aiming for her whole life was essentially a crock of shit.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's gotten a much better deal out of Isadora, probably.
We'll see.
Like, she shouldn't be feeling that bad. But, well, I mean, a better deal than the Thorburn household's not really a high bar. But yeah, so I don't know. It'd be interesting to. I just really want Paige to come back into this. I think there's some really interesting stuff to do with her.
Yeah, can't wait to see her again. So basically, Katherine is saved by a Deus Ex hand that reaches out of a window and basically kills this clown. And Katherine is saved, and she kind of is like, okay, well, I guess my give up is rescinded, and I'll keep climbing. So thanks, Mr. Hugs.
Yeah, what is this? A crosser? Yeah. No, I like this as a sort of, there's always a bigger fish moment. Because it's a great way of sort of saying, okay, we're safe, but we're not safe. Like, there's just so much shit going on. This is like an ecosystem of terrible. And then sinks start falling as well. And there's just this general sense of like, okay, she's not seconds away from dying now, but she could be.
Yeah, but literally anyone is seconds away. She's not in any immediate danger. She's just in the high amount of danger that we're all in, because we could die at any moment from anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So with that threat out of the way, they keep climbing, and we kind of do a little bit of a time skip as Blake has a vision. This vision is of Rose and the Cabal researching him, and Rose has figured out what he is. The split-heirs theory is confirmed. Yay! Congratulations, Elliot. Blake and Rose are fighting for dominance over the same body, and she basically explains this to his friends and swears them all to secrecy.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you can't really blame Rose for this.
Yeah.
She has no reason to trust Blake at this point. She has every reason to feel justifiably threatened by him since, from the sounds of it, she believes that they are essentially built to fight each other, and that's sort of what everyone has been telling them all story.
Yeah.
And especially now he's a boogeyman, and again, I think he's going to be really hurt that his friends picked her side, but again, from their perspective, it's hard to see why they wouldn't.
Yeah.
In that situation, picking Rose seems kind of like the easy choice.
Yeah.
They have no reason to trust him. They don't know him.
Yeah.
I wonder if Rose knew this pre-earning.
What do you think? What would be more horrifying?
I think maybe. Probably yes, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel like maybe she did, but I don't know. It probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things. I want to pull out this line that Rose says because she seems to be kind of throwing out justifications for the Cabal staying on her side. And she says, when a man is cut in twain by the shears, the part that retains the heart and soul is female. And so this indicates, firstly, that the original Rose or Blake was male, which is a fun fact, I guess. But I kind of feel like this is bullshit, right? Maybe not that it's a lie, but that Rose kind of pulls out this line as justification for why she's the real one, no backsies, but there's parts that she's just conveniently not mentioning. Okay, yes, the person who gets the heart and soul is female, but the person who gets the connections and the brains is male. And she's just kind of picked the heart and soul abstractly as the thing that's the core human essence, where it's not really that clear-cut.
Yeah, I mean, right from the get-go, I didn't really buy this whole bit of, I'm sorry, but I can't see a situation where I've read the story that I've read, and I think that Rose over Blake is the one who got the heart and soul.
Yeah, fair.
She's always kind of been the more logical, scientific, heartlessy one. That just doesn't add up to me. And I mean, maybe it works the other way around. If it was originally Rose, Rose is still working off the assumption she's the one who was cut off. But it's if a female is cut up, then maybe it's the male who gets the heart and soul, and she just kind of left that information out. So yeah, I don't know. I don't believe for a second that in this situation, she's the one who ended up with the heart and soul. That just doesn't.
Yeah.
Unless heart and soul means a very different thing in Pact to what I'm using it to mean.
Yeah, I mean, obviously she's not lying. She can't lie. But I also don't feel like she's being deceptive here. I think that this is what she believes. She genuinely believes, I'm the one that is meant to be the heir. I'm the one that got the bits that, that the heir is meant to get. But it just feels like she's oversimplifying it. I don't believe that that's true, but I do believe she thinks it's true.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, and she has every reason to now that she's the one out of the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like a boogeyman.
Yeah, I wonder if she did know this beforehand, she presumably could have been acting more directly against Blake earlier to try and usurp his out of mirror position.
Yeah, you would have. Oh no, I don't know, because if she knew that Granny Rose had contrived the whole scenario to let Blake kill all the enemies and stuff, she would have been more inclined to try and keep making peace with him, so he focused his efforts on everything else, not her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But and then obviously, I think the fact that we now know that she's not a complete person as well, and she's having to reinforce herself with something. Again, this just sort of feeds into that whole idea that she probably doesn't really have as good a grip as she thinks on the conquest stuff, because presumably when she takes damage now, she's able to tap into and replace it with conquest energy rather than spirits. That doesn't seem like it would be a good thing to me. I don't. Replacing with spirits hasn't been 100% successful for everyone else either, though. So I don't know, but it just feels like it's a not good thing.
She just needs to legitimize it. Sign that paper, make him your familiar, and go from there. So we see everyone in the Cabal sign on to this willingly, explicitly willingly, except for Evan. Blake notes that Evan seems to just kind of be, I guess, peer pressured into going along with it, even though he doesn't really want to. So Evan is
Yeah.
still on side. Evan can be swayed back to your side, Blake. Bird Boy and Scary Tree forever.
Yes, I can't wait for the spin-off series. Or is it a spin-off if it's the same main character? Anyway, but no, I do love, like, it's just been nice. It's been one of the pure and nice things in this story since Blake got back from the drains, and just sort of how instantly he and Evan kind of rebonded.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of good to have that mixed into this kind of negative betrayal vision. The sense that, Evan wasn't okay with it, just naturally.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to talk about here, right at the end, as Rose is getting all the others to promise to take her side, that she injects conquest energy into her voice to basically make it happen. And so her quote here is that she influenced but not forced them. They made the call of their own accord. And like, what a load of bullshit that is. Like, Little Miss Heart and Soul, apparently, over here, is, just being like, oh, I didn't force them to do it. I just, heavily influenced it. So, it's fine.
Yeah. It's pretty heart and soulless, I would say.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, again, I get why she did it. But it's just, I don't know. She kind of. I'm assuming that the narration we get is almost like it's a little mini Rose interlude here, just from the way some of it's phrased, and this seems like her just being like, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's just, I'm just helping it a bit, and it's like, no, you're not. This is like blatantly manipulative.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a manipulative play for sure.
And so, not to take your job, Ruben, but I want to quickly focus in on the first few lines after the vision ends before we talk about what happens after the vision proper.
Yeah.
Which is Blake comes out of the vision, and he says, "I felt the bird-like flutter in my chest, jerk, twitch, then splinter, as if it was multiplying. My entire body shuddered with the ensuing vibrations, as if I had a flock of birds within me." And I mean, we've talked a lot in the last few arcs about how Blake has been processing his emotions through this othery lens of them being like flutters in his chest and being very bird-like. And this is obviously like a bit of a delivery on some of that, because he's so, like, this has presumably pissed him off to such a huge degree.
Yep.
That he's kind of exploding, and maybe that's manifesting as more spirits appearing in his sternum. Like, I don't know. I could actually see this as the Abyss kind of, just chucking him a few helpful hands, being like, hey, I'm just going to piss you off and then juice you up a bit, and off you go back into reality, cause some trouble.
Do you think, so obviously we had the beats earlier on in this, or last arc of Blake, was it this arc, last arc, whatever, of Blake kind of being sucked down towards the Abyss. Do you think that the Abyss now, kind of, the way I read this now is the Abyss was kind of like, look, you're not being boogeyman enough, you're being a bit too friendly, come back down here, I'll give you a few more anger-inducing, vindictive-inducing visions, and then I'll send you back up, topped up with spirits, how about that?
Yeah, I mean, because Blake talks about the Abyss as if it's like sort of, the place has its own consciousness,
Yeah.
And I don't know how much intelligence to attribute to it. Like, is it more spirit-esque, where it's kind of very reactive and follows some simple rules, or is it, essentially like I mean, if it's capable of like pretty high intelligence, I'd almost at that point call it some sort of god-like entity, considering how big the Abyss is.
I would say that the sheer on-pointness of these visions, let's say, like the ability of the Abyss to pick these visions that so perfectly seem to get Blake to the emotional state that it seems to want, indicates a kind of malevolent intelligence, I would say.
Yeah, so like I'd basically assume that that's some sort of god level thing.
I think the Abyss is Wildbow's self-insert. That's my fan theory. The Abyss is Wildbow in this universe.
Yeah, but anyway, it's
not gonna touch that
one. No. So yeah, I don't know. I'm so interested to see how he goes from here, because I feel like this is. I love the idea that this has tripped Blake's other emotions to a new degree, and what that's going to indicate for him going forward.
Yeah,
I feel like he's going to come out of the Abyss not like he did last time. I guess it's impossible to come out of here not a little bit more chewed up or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep, in the way that a Wildbow story kind of grinds you down. Wildbow creates all these monsters that he sends out to his readers in the same way that the Abyss creates all these monsters that it sends out into the world. Look, I'm just saying, it's a fan theory, all right? Get on board. Anyway, should we move on?
So the group continues their climb.
They keep climbing and they make it to the top safely. But at what cost?
Yeah, and I like this this bit where Blake can't even sort of look at Alexis. It's a bit of a reversal from what we've seen, the last arc-ish. So,
yeah,
he said there's been instances where Alexis wasn't quite able to look him in the eye or whatever. I'm just so psyched to see where this goes.
I like that you frame that as a reversal because Blake has attributed it to, Alexis must have taken some damage and she doesn't want me to see her. But I kind of can see it as Alexis kind of realizing and getting closer to Blake and starting to feel more and more guilty about this exact thing to the point that she doesn't want to look him in the eyes because she feels guilty about this. Especially the kind of person that she is, where she is someone who kind of has made it her life's purpose to rehabilitate people that she sees as fallen or lost. Blake is obviously a prime candidate for that.
I mean, because we had that bit when Andy and Eva first stormed the house, and she kind of manipulated him, probably, into attacking the paper girl. And knowing what we know now, it's hard to believe that was anything other than her just kind of straight up manipulating the fact that she knew about their friendship.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there was even that bit after he confessed how important she was to him, and she just sort of didn't respond for ages. Presumably, that was her juggling the promise she'd made to Rose with reacting to this, as you're saying.
And Rose has been away for 8 hours, and Blake has been there fighting, gambling with his life to save her and the rest of them. I can imagine she would be starting to turn around on him.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, on the whole, they weren't in the Abyss for too long. Only a few almost deaths and only one world-shattering revelation, which is an improvement over last time we were here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, good job. They did a little Abyss speed run, and Operation Drain Drop was a success.
Yeah, and so now they get to go back to the frying pan that they jumped out of.
Yay!
Half a chapter
Literally
ago.
back to the fire, I think.
Yeah.
So that's the end of 12.5. Now, a quick reminder: we have a discussion thread currently running, a discussion question. Encouraging you to create the backstory for a boogeyman based on a local urban legend local to you. Make sure you get your answers in ASAP, because we will be taking a look at those for our next chapter, which is coming out in 3 days, I think.
Yeah. And we'll be recording a day before that, so 2 days. You got about 2 days.
Yeah,
from
get it in
being
quick.
Released.
Before we leave, though, Elliot wanted to. Well, why don't you explain it, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, so for the bonus bit today, I wanted to talk about defenestration. Just because, both you and Wildbow informed me that for some reason, the fandom really latched on to this ill-fitting suit guy, and named him the defenestration boogeyman.
Yep.
And I've just always loved the word defenestration, and I wanted to talk about the history of the word, because I've always thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, it's an etymology monster corner this time.
Oh, it's almost more just a little history lesson, history corner. I don't know. I mean, just to quickly get the actual etymology bit over. Fenestra is Latin for like an opening, like an aperture, or like a window. And then like D is sort of, the Latin prefix for like from or of. So it sort of literally translates to like from the window, like defenestrate.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. But the term was actually sort of coined in 1618 in Prague. There were basically a bunch of like Catholic regents, and they were thrown out the window by some Protestants that they were arguing with.
Classic.
It was like a 3rd-story window, and all 3 of the Catholics who were thrown out actually survived. The Catholics attributed this to angels saving them. The Protestants said that they all fell in a dung heap, so it depends who you ask. But either way, this actually ended up kicking off the 30 Years' War, which, for those of you who don't know, it's actually one of the biggest ones in history. Like 8 million people died. in this war, and that's not just due to the fighting, but like the war kind of fucked up the infrastructure of like Central Europe so much that most of those deaths were actually just sort of due to famine and plague. So it was this original defenestration was actually quite impactful on Europe's history. But the reason that the term was coined from this one throwing out of the window is actually because it was the third defenestration of Prague.
They love their defenestrations there, don't they?
Yeah, they were all about defenestrations back then, apparently. So the first one was actually in 1418, and basically there was like this riot going on, and it kind of escalated, and 7 city council members got thrown out windows.
Okay.
And this one's also quite famous because it kicked off the Hussite Wars. Hussite, I don't know. I should have looked up how to pronounce that. But that's another war that lasted 18 years. So you got to be really careful about who you defenestrate. Because you can really escalate. You really things, kick apparently. Off a war. In fact, like when these 7 council members were defenestrated in 1418. Apparently, the king of Bohemia was so shocked to hear this that he died of shock.
That's... Oh, okay. Weird.
But yeah, anyway, so then there was the second defenestration, which is, less known, but basically there was like an organized coup of Prague. So this is all still defenestrations of Prague, I should say. But this is the second
Prague
defenestration
is the capital of the world for defenestrations.
Yeah, I mean, apparently. But anyway, this one actually, like, it was like part of an organized coup, and a bunch of people got defenestrated, and that actually led to like some laws being passed. So all these churches were sort of equal under the law, and it led to an era of peace. So, seems like this was far and away the most successful defenestration of Prague. Didn't just lead to millions of people dying.
Yay! A defenestration for good.
Anyway, then there's some other defenestrations fighting for the label of the fourth.
Yep.
But there's not really any or any agreement on which one holds the title. One of the big candidates though is actually from 1948. So this isn't all medieval.
Oh,
there's been some fairly recent defenestrations of note in Prague.
There you go.
But anyway, so that's just a brief summary of the defenestrations of Prague, because like that's just so crazy to me that this is such a recurring beat in Prague that it got its own name and ended up coining the word for throwing someone out a window.
Yeah. So we've met the Lord of Prague this chapter, and we'll see if he makes a return.
Anyway, that's
cool.
Our episode for today.
Well, thanks for that, Elliot. But that brings us to the end of our episode on 12.5. If you have any famous defenestrations that you'd like to talk about, obviously, as everyone knows, the place for defenestration chat is our discussion threads, which are on Reddit. Also the place to leave your answers to our discussion question. You can find that in a link down in the little down below bits of the podcast.
Yeah. And have you heard of Twitter? If not,
Whoa.
I mean, probably don't.
What is it?
Probably don't bother. But if you're already there, head on over to @MediaMD Podcast. Give us a follow. I do live reads there. We do some other announcements there.
Yep.
I think it's a great Twitter to follow.
Me too.
Because it's useful for Deep Impact listeners.
And if 2 of us think it can't be wrong. That's @MediaMD Podcast. If you want to check out other shows on the Doof Media Network or other info about our show, Deep Impact, the place to head is doofmedia.com. You can also find all of the other great Doof Media shows, like this great show with 2 handsome and charming hosts that we call Media MD. Just released an episode yesterday talking about Twisted Pair, the latest Neil Breen movie, which was an experience.
If you're wondering what that is, so are we. So go listen to that episode to, get a taste for the wild world of Breen.
Yes, on the spooky Halloween topic, next fortnight on Media MD, those 2 chaps will be talking about the 2 Jordan Peele movies, Us and Get Out. So if you're interested in that, check out the latest episode of Media MD.
Yes, and also later today, if you're listening just as this has come out, we've got our Doof and Chill session. So for patrons at the $5 tier and above, the Doof Dancer tier, We're getting together with Scott and some of the other guys, and we're all going to be playing a game of Would I Lie to You, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yes, me too. In order to get access to that, as Elliot said, you need to be a patron of $5 or up, or $5 and up. And the place to do that is www.patreon.com/doofmedia. You get access to a whole bunch of perks for backing the network on Patreon, but the biggest perk of all is just that it warms my cold, cold heart. So check that out if you would like to, and you can afford to. And if you can't, you don't have to. That's okay too.
Yeah, if every listener patrons, then both Blake and Rose will have a heart.
Yep, that's how it works. Then they both get to share the body, like a pair of Siamese twins.
Yeah, and if you liked The Abyss and you want more horrible shit in your inbox, Patreon
in your
Wildbow.
Inbox, you can get it directly mailed. He'll mail you directly horrible shit if you back him on Patreon.
Okay, I do think you can subscribe. I think you can actually subscribe to email updates on the Wildbow WordPress blogs. Maybe
go.
I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Anyway, just go to Patreon/Wildbow and give him money, and he'll keep writing.
Yep.
And then we'll keep getting more crazy stories.
Yep. He actually has written a few more interesting little Pact short stories set in the Pact universe. And that's because we all love him and we all support him. So continue to do that.
Yes.
Wow, this is our longest non-interlude chapter, I think. But don't worry, it's over now. So we'll be back on Monday the 21st of October to talk about Duress 12.5. So we'll see you then.
See ya.